The kingdom of Avran was known for its peaceful mornings. Birds sang in the tall trees near the palace walls, and shopkeepers opened their small wooden stalls with smiles. Travelers passed through the main gate every day, and they always felt safe because the royal guard stood strong and alert. Among these guards was Ravi, a calm man who believed in fairness more than force. His uniform was simple, and his shield was always polished. But what people respected most was his steady nature. Ravi had grown up in a quiet village before joining the palace guard. His father taught him that strength was not in shouting or fighting but in patience. Ravi carried those words with him every day. When people approached the gate with questions or worries, he listened carefully and helped them without raising his voice. Because of this, many villagers trusted him deeply. That same trust was what led a traveler named Naro to approach him one morning. Naro looked tired from a long journey. His clothes were dusty, and he carried a small bag over his shoulder. He glanced around nervously before stepping closer to Ravi. Ravi stood with his usual calm posture, one hand resting on the wooden frame of the gate. He greeted Naro with a friendly nod. Naro took a breath, as if gathering courage, and then began to explain why he had come. He told Ravi about a man named Moro who had arrived in a nearby town 2 days earlier. Moro was known for his proud behavior. He always tried to show others that he was strong, even when no one asked him to prove anything. He often spoke loudly and tried to impress people by giving orders to his large dog named Blaze. Blaze was a strong and powerful animal trained to respond to sharp commands. Many townspeople kept their distance from Moro because they felt uneasy around him. Naro explained that he had seen Moro boasting in the town square. Moro loudly told anyone who would listen that he wanted to challenge a royal guard to show his strength. He said the guards were too confident and needed to be humbled. His friends tried to calm him, but Moro refused. Instead, he told them he would bring Blaze to the palace gate and prove something in front of everyone. Naro felt this was dangerous. He knew Blaze was trained, but also believed animals could act unpredictably if pushed too hard. So he made the long walk to the palace to warn Ravi. Ravi listened quietly to every detail. When Naro finished, the guard thanked him sincerely. He appreciated the warning and told Naro he did the right thing by speaking up. Naro looked relieved and soon walked toward the market to rest. Ravi stayed at his post, thinking about what he had been told. He did not worry about himself, but he worried about the dog. Animals often behaved according to how they were trained and treated. If Moro pushed Blaze too harshly, the dog might react out of fear or confusion. Ravi believed the best way to guide any creature was with patience, not pressure. As the sun climbed higher, Ravi continued greeting travelers and checking wagons passing through the gate. Yet his mind stayed alert. He prepared himself, not for a fight, but for a situation that might need calm thinking. Around midday, a group of merchants arrived with carts filled with cloth and spices. They chatted as Ravi inspected their goods, making sure everything followed the kingdom rules. After he allowed them through, he glanced down the road again. A few children played nearby, rolling a wooden hoop back and forth. They laughed without care, unaware of the tension moving slowly toward the palace. Hours passed, and the light shifted as the sun began its slow descent. Ravi drank water from a small clay cup and remained steady. The guards beside him felt comfortable knowing Ravi was present. His confidence spread quietly to others, even without words. In a distant part of the kingdom, Moro was preparing for his plan. He stood in a yard behind a small inn, holding Blaze's leash tightly. Blaze sat with a straight posture, ears alert, waiting for instructions. Moro stroked the dog's fur with a proud smile. He believed that anyone who saw Blaze would be impressed. He imagined how people would react when the dog followed his commands at the palace gate. Moro thought this challenge would make him famous. He wanted people to talk about him in the markets and streets. He felt that strength was measured by how loudly others praised you. Because of this belief, he often acted in ways that caused fear rather than respect. Blaze, however, did not understand these thoughts. The dog understood only commands, tones, and gestures. Blaze had been trained to run, jump, and respond sharply. The dog's eyes stayed focused, waiting for Moro's signal. Moro tightened Blaze's collar and proudly said they would leave soon. Meanwhile, back at the palace gate, the atmosphere grew quieter. The breeze carried a scent of blooming flowers from the gardens nearby. A few soldiers walked past Ravi to begin their evening patrol. Ravi nodded to them and then looked down the road once more. Near sunset, he noticed dust rising from the path in the distance. A figure slowly became visible, walking with firm steps. The figure was holding a leash, and beside him walked a large dog with broad shoulders and sharp eyes. Ravi straightened his back but did not show fear or tension. His expression stayed calm. Children nearby paused their game and ran back to their parents. Shopkeepers leaned forward to see what was happening. A few travelers stepped aside, making space on the road. When Moro reached the gate, he lifted his chin proudly. Blaze stood silently, muscles tight, watching everything around him. Ravi greeted them politely as he greeted everyone. His simple words surprised Moro, who expected the guard to look nervous. Moro replied with a confident smile and announced that he had come to test the strength of the royal guards. He said he wanted to show that he and Blaze were capable of facing anyone. Ravi kept his tone steady. He told Morrow that the palace was a place of peace and that no tests of strength were needed. He said the guards were there to protect people, not compete with them. Morrow waved off the words and claimed that he had the right to challenge someone if he wished. People began to gather quietly around the gate. They whispered to each other but kept a respectful distance. They worried the dog might react in a sudden way. Blaze stood silently, watching every movement, waiting for Morrow's next signal. Ravi slowly lowered his hand near his side. He kept his movements soft so Blaze would not feel threatened. Animals often sensed feelings quicker than humans. Ravi believed Blaze would respond to calm energy. Morrow took a step forward. He lifted his hand as if preparing to give Blaze a sharp command. Before he said anything, Ravi spoke again, telling him that challenges based on pride often brought more trouble than success. But Morrow ignored the warning. The air grew heavy with tension. People held their breath. The dog's muscles tightened in response to Morrow's posture. Blaze did not know what was happening, but he sensed the energy growing sharp. Ravi remained still. His eyes stayed gentle. He waited for the moment he knew would come. This moment would decide not only the path of Morrow's plan but also the future of Blaze, the future of the peaceful square, and the future of the lesson that would unfold in the next seconds. The sun had begun its slow journey toward the horizon, painting the palace walls in warm golden light. The streets near the main gate were quiet, but the square itself was growing busier. Villagers, merchants, and travelers all stopped to watch the unusual scene unfolding. The moment had arrived and everyone sensed it. Morrow walked toward the palace gate with Blaze by his side. The dog's coat shone in the evening light, and his powerful muscles moved with precise control. He did not make a sound, but his presence was enough to make people step back. Children clung to their parents, while older villagers whispered to each other. Some of them had heard stories of Morrow's proud behavior and the fierce training of Blaze. They were curious to see how it would end. Ravi stood at his post as if nothing unusual was happening. His calm eyes observed every movement of Morrow and Blaze. His shield rested against his side, polished and steady. Despite the tension in the air, Ravi's expression did not change. People often said his calmness had a strange power. When he smiled or spoke gently, even the angriest animals seemed to quiet down. Many believed Ravi could understand creatures better than most humans. Morrow raised his head and looked at Ravi. He smiled proudly and said he had come to challenge the royal guard. The words echoed in the square, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. He wanted to show his strength, and he expected a reaction of fear or respect. Morrow assumed that his plan would impress everyone. Ravi answered politely, greeting Morrow with respect. He told Morrow that the palace was a place of peace. The guards were there to protect the people, not to prove who was stronger. The words surprised Morrow. He had expected the guard to look nervous or angry, but instead Ravi stayed calm and unshaken. That calmness confused Morrow slightly, but he dismissed it quickly. He believed his dog would carry the plan forward, and that was enough. Blaze sat silently, watching Ravi closely. The dog's ears moved slightly, picking up the subtle sounds around the gate. Every person in the square could see the power in Blaze's posture. He was ready to respond, waiting for a command. People held their breath. Some were afraid, others curious. But everyone knew the tension could break at any second. Morrow lifted his hand, preparing to give Blaze the first order. He imagined the dog running forward, showing its strength. He believed the royal guard would step back or react with fear. But Ravi did not step back. Instead, he lowered his hand slowly and moved gently, making sure his actions were calm. The dog noticed the difference immediately. Blaze tilted his head, sensing a strange peace in Ravi's movements. Ravi spoke softly to Blaze, not as a command but as a gesture of understanding. His voice was low and steady, carrying no fear or force. Blaze's tail, once rigid, relaxed slightly. His eyes, sharp and alert, softened a little. The dog felt that this man was not an enemy. He had not been given such calm energy before. The crowd noticed the change and murmured quietly. Something unexpected was happening. Morrow shouted a sharp command to Blaze, trying to regain control. "Attack!" He barked with authority. Blaze looked at Morrow but did not move. Instead, he turned his attention toward Ravi. The dog slowly stepped closer to the guard, wagging his tail slightly. The people watching gasped. They had expected chaos, but they saw calm obedience instead. Blaze had refused the aggressive order and chosen to approach the man who showed kindness. Morrow's face changed. His confidence began to fade as he realized his plan was not working. He pulled at Blaze's leash, giving another loud command. Blaze resisted, moving closer to Ravi with calm trust. The dog's actions puzzled Morrow. He had never seen Blaze act against his direct commands, and he did not know what to do. His pride, which had driven him to challenge the palace guard, now caused confusion and frustration. Ravi kept his eyes on Blaze. He spoke to the dog gently, calling him by name in a soft tone. Blaze responded by sitting near Ravi's feet, relaxing further. The crowd, once tense, began to watch in amazement. The scene had changed completely. Instead of an attack, they were witnessing peace and understanding between a guard and a powerful dog. The villagers whispered to each other, realizing that true strength was not always shown in force. Moro's friends stood nearby, uncertain what to do. They had come to support him, expecting a grand display of power. Instead, they watched as Blaze, trained to intimidate, refused to follow commands that were harsh or impatient. It was a lesson in patience and calm, even if Moro did not yet understand it. The people around the square felt relief as tension slowly eased. Children peeked from behind their parents, amazed by the dog's gentle behavior. Ravi took a step forward slowly. He extended his hand toward Blaze, offering a gesture of friendship. Blaze sniffed the guard's hand and pressed his head gently against it. The crowd smiled quietly. They saw a moment of trust and connection forming right in front of them. Moro, still holding the leash, looked surprised. He had expected obedience through fear, not trust through calmness. For the first time, he began to doubt his own methods. Ravi turned to Moro, speaking in a firm but gentle voice. He told him that true strength came not from forcing others but from guiding them. He explained that animals, like people, reacted to the energy they received. If they were treated with anger or impatience, they might respond with aggression. If they were treated with care and understanding, they would act with trust and calm. The villagers listened quietly. Many nodded, understanding the lesson in the guard's words. Even the elders who had gathered watched intently. Seeing the truth in what Ravi said, Moro looked at Blaze, who now sat peacefully beside the guard. The dog no longer seemed like a weapon of intimidation but a loyal companion responding to kindness. Moro's face flushed with embarrassment. He had come to show power, but instead, he had learned something he had never considered. The lesson was clear and visible to all. Ravi continued to speak, explaining that patience and control were marks of real strength. He said that pride could lead to mistakes, but understanding and calmness created respect and trust. The people around the square began to nod. They realized that the guard had not only protected the palace but also shown wisdom that could change the way people acted in their daily lives. Moro stayed silent. He looked at Blaze, then at the crowd, and finally at Ravi. The words of the guard stayed in his mind. He could see the difference between his method of force and the gentle control that Ravi displayed. The dog's calm behavior proved the lesson more clearly than any words could. Moro's pride and anger began to fade, replaced by an uneasy sense of reflection. He had come for a challenge, but instead, he faced a truth he had ignored for too long. The villagers slowly returned to their homes or shops, talking quietly about what they had seen. They would remember the day when a calm guard and a trained dog taught a lesson that strength was not in aggression but in patience. The square, once filled with fear and expectation, now felt peaceful. Children began to play again near the fountain, laughing as if the tension had never existed. Merchants smiled as they closed their stalls, happy to see the square return to normal. Ravi stayed at his post, watching Moro and Blaze for a while longer. He knew that change took time, and pride could take longer to soften. Still, he felt confident that the lesson had begun. Blaze remained calm beside him, loyal but not forced. The dog's trust was earned through understanding, and that trust could grow stronger with patience. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square, Moro finally lowered his head. He did not speak yet, but his posture softened. The leash in his hand relaxed, and he allowed Blaze to stay by Ravi's side. The people watching sensed a small but important victory. They had witnessed an unusual moment where peace and calm overcame pride and aggression. It was a story they would tell for years. About the day the royal guard showed that strength was more than physical power. Ravi smiled slightly, his calm eyes scanning the crowd. He greeted the people politely as they passed, speaking in the same gentle tone that had guided Blaze. The children waved at him, and the merchants nodded in respect. The lesson was clear. Patience and kindness were more powerful than force and intimidation. Moro looked at Blaze once again. He could feel the dog's loyalty and calmness. For the first time, he considered that he had been wrong in his approach. The thought of learning to guide the dog with understanding instead of harsh commands crossed his mind. It was a small realization, but it marked the beginning of change. He did not speak yet, but his silence was different from before. It was thoughtful and reflective. As the evening settled over the kingdom, Ravi remained at his post. He had faced a situation that could have caused fear, but he had chosen calmness and patience instead. The villagers felt safer, and even Moro had learned a lesson in humility and understanding. Blaze stayed peacefully at the guard's side, a symbol of trust and cooperation. The square was filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment and hope for the future. The next morning, the palace square was quiet and calm. The sun had just risen, casting soft light over the palace walls. Birds chirped in the trees near the gate, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the gardens. The villagers went about their daily routines, but whispers of the previous day's events still lingered. Everyone remembered the calm guard Ravi and the powerful dog Blaze, who had refused to obey harsh commands. People discussed the lesson quietly, amazed at what had happened. Ravi stood at his post as usual. His uniform was neat, and his shield rested against his side. The man carried himself with quiet confidence. He knew Moro might return, but he was prepared. The lesson of calmness and patience had to continue, not only for Blaze but for anyone willing to learn. Ravi believed that understanding and respect could change even the most stubborn hearts. Morrow, however, did not return that morning. He had spent the night thinking about what had happened. He replayed the scene over and over in his mind. Blaze, his loyal companion, had refused to attack, even when commanded loudly. Morrow's pride had been challenged, and for the first time, he felt doubt. He realized that strength might not be shown in the way he thought. He had learned that true power required patience and understanding. But pride is difficult to let go immediately. Morrow knew he needed to return to the palace to reclaim his sense of authority, even if the lesson from Ravi remained in his mind. He wanted to understand how a single man could calm such a powerful dog and influence the people around him. Morrow prepared Blaze, brushing the dog's coat and speaking softly. Blaze responded to Morrow's gentle tone, sitting quietly and looking alert. The dog sensed the change in his master and seemed willing to learn. By mid-morning, Morrow and Blaze appeared at the palace gate again. People gathered, curious about what would happen. Some wondered if Morrow would repeat his challenge. Others hoped that the peaceful scene from yesterday would continue. Ravi noticed the approaching figures but did not show surprise. He had expected them. His calm eyes studied Morrow carefully, noting the difference in his posture and expression. The man seemed less arrogant and more thoughtful. Morrow stopped a few steps from the gate. He did not shout or command Blaze immediately. Instead, he looked at the dog and whispered softly. Blaze responded by sitting quietly beside him. The people watching were amazed. Morrow had clearly begun to understand that force alone did not earn obedience or respect. This change was visible in his body language and his gentle approach to Blaze. Ravi greeted Morrow politely. "Good morning," he said in his calm voice. "It is good to see you here again. How are you and Blaze today?" The words were simple, yet they carried respect and a sense of trust. Morrow paused, almost surprised by the question. He was not used to being treated with kindness when he had acted aggressively. I am trying to understand," Morrow said quietly. "I want Blaze to listen to me, but not out of fear. I want him to trust me." His voice was lower than usual, lacking the proud tone he normally used. The crowd noticed the difference. Some smiled quietly. Others whispered to each other, recognizing that change had begun in Morrow's heart. Ravi nodded. "That is a good way to begin," he said. "Trust and understanding are stronger than commands and force. If you remain patient, Blaze will respond in a way that is calm and respectful. The bond you share will become stronger." His words were simple, yet they carried wisdom that everyone around could understand. Morrow looked at Blaze, who remained quietly by his side. The dog's ears twitched slightly as he watched Ravi, then looked back at Morrow. The animal's calm energy reflected the lessons of the previous day. Blaze had chosen peace, and Morrow was beginning to see the value of that choice. He took a deep breath and let go of the leash slightly, allowing Blaze to walk a few steps closer to Ravi. The dog obeyed, moving calmly and without fear. The crowd gasped quietly. People had expected tension, yet they saw a remarkable moment of understanding. Blaze, once a tool for intimidation, now moved freely and calmly, guided by trust. Morrow observed carefully, learning from the guard's patience and gentle approach. He realized that his behavior yesterday had been driven by pride rather than wisdom. Now, he wanted to learn. Ravi spoke to Morrow again, explaining how dogs respond to energy and intention. "Animals can sense how we feel," he said. "If we are angry or impatient, they may react with aggression. If we are calm and kind, they respond with trust. This is true not only for dogs but for people as well. Patience and understanding guide others better than force ever can." The people listening nodded quietly, absorbing the lesson. Morrow tried a new approach. He knelt down beside Blaze and spoke softly. "Good dog," he said gently. Blaze looked at him, then pressed his head lightly against Morrow's hand. The dog wagged his tail slightly, showing comfort and trust. The crowd watched, amazed at the change in both master and dog. Ravi stepped forward slightly, offering guidance. He demonstrated a few gentle gestures that could help Morrow communicate with Blaze without harsh commands. Blaze responded to each gesture, showing attentiveness and calmness. Morrow followed Ravi's example carefully, learning the correct way to show leadership through patience. As Morrow practiced, the villagers noticed a remarkable transformation. The man who had come to challenge the palace guard with pride and force was now quiet, thoughtful, and respectful. His focus was on building trust with Blaze rather than showing power to the crowd. The people whispered to each other, impressed by the change in both Morrow and the dog. Ravi continued to explain how consistency mattered. "Blaze will trust you if you remain calm every day," he said. "Every action and every word shapes his behavior. Leadership is not in loud commands but in steady guidance. If you continue this way, you will see a stronger bond between you and Blaze." Morrow nodded carefully, taking the words to heart. He understood that real strength required patience, understanding, and consistency. Blaze, now sitting calmly beside him, seemed to sense his master's sincere intention. The dog's ears twitched as he looked at Ravi, acknowledging the connection that had been built. People in the square began to smile. They had come expecting fear and conflict, yet they saw a story of trust and change unfolding. Children returned to their games, cautiously watching Blaze as he moved with calm confidence. Merchants whispered about the lesson, recognizing that patience and understanding were more powerful than force. Morrow spent the next hour practicing with Blaze under Ravi's careful guidance. Each time the dog responded with calmness and attention. Morrow's confidence grew, not the prideful confidence of yesterday, but the steady confidence of someone learning a new skill. He realized that leading with respect was more valuable than leading with fear. Ravi watched quietly, offering small suggestions. He encouraged Morrow to keep his movements slow and gentle, to use his voice softly, and to allow Blaze to make small decisions. The dog responded positively, showing signs of trust that had never existed before. The villagers watched in admiration, realizing that this was more than a lesson for Morrow. It was a lesson for everyone about patience, guidance, and the power of calmness. By the time the sun began to lower, casting warm light across the square, Morrow had learned much. He understood the importance of trust and the value of a gentle hand in guiding a strong animal. Blaze, now calm and attentive, followed his master with quiet confidence. The two of them together formed a new bond, one built on understanding and respect rather than force and pride. Ravi stepped back, allowing Morrow to lead Blaze for a few moments. The dog responded perfectly, walking beside him with calm trust. The people around the square clapped quietly, acknowledging the remarkable transformation they had witnessed. Morrow looked at Ravi with gratitude in his eyes. He had come to challenge a guard and prove strength, but instead, he had learned something far more valuable. That the lesson was clear to everyone present. Patience, understanding, and calm guidance created true strength. Pride and aggression could lead to failure, but gentle and steady leadership could bring loyalty, trust, and respect. The villagers carried this lesson in their hearts, knowing that the story they had witnessed would be told for many years. That as the evening approached, Morrow and Blaze walked away from the gate together, their bond stronger than before. Ravi remained at his post, calm and steady as always. He had not only protected the palace but had guided a man and his dog toward a better path. The square returned to its peaceful state, and the kingdom of Averin felt the quiet power of understanding and patience at work. The unexpected turn had begun. Morrow's pride had been softened, Blaze's trust had been earned, and the lesson of calmness and patience spread quietly through the hearts of those who had watched. This day would be remembered not for fear or challenge, but for the power of gentle guidance and the strength that comes from understanding. The next day, the palace square was filled with the soft sounds of morning. Birds sang cheerfully, and the wind carried the scent of flowers from the gardens near the gate. Villagers were busy setting up their shops. Children ran along the stone paths, and the guards prepared for the day's duties. Among them, Ravi stood at his post, calm and steady as always. His eyes moved gently across the square, observing every person, every movement, and every sound. He knew that the lesson of trust and patience was not finished yet. Morrow had returned with Blaze. His expression was thoughtful and serious. He walked slowly beside the dog, keeping his voice soft and his gestures gentle. Yesterday had been a lesson he could not forget. The dog, once trained to follow commands harshly, now showed calm and trust. Morrow understood that he could guide Blaze only through patience and respect, not force. He was determined to continue learning. Ravi watched carefully as Morrow approached. The villagers noticed the change immediately. The proud and confident man who had come the day before now walked with quiet focus. There was no arrogance in his posture. His movements were deliberate and calm, showing that he had begun to understand what true leadership meant. The people whispered among themselves, impressed by the transformation. Blaze moved quietly beside Morrow. His eyes were alert but calm. The dog had clearly learned to trust both his master and Ravi. The villagers could see the strong bond that had begun to form between the man and his companion. Blaze's powerful frame no longer seemed intimidating. Instead, it reflected a sense of cooperation and harmony. Ravi stepped forward and greeted Morrow politely. "Good morning," he said. "It is good to see you again. How are you and Blaze today?" His calm tone carried respect and patience. Morrow paused and smiled slightly. He had never been treated with such kindness when he had acted proudly or aggressively. "I am learning," Morrow said quietly. "Blaze listens to me differently now. I am trying to understand what he needs, not just what I want. I want him to trust me and feel safe." His voice carried sincerity. The people watching felt a sense of admiration for his willingness to change. Ravi nodded. "That is the right way," he said. "Trust comes from understanding, not from fear. If you continue to guide Blaze with patience, he will respond with loyalty. You will see that true strength comes from gentle guidance and calm leadership." His words were simple but powerful. They carried wisdom that everyone present could understand. Morrow knelt down beside Blaze and spoke softly to the dog. "Good dog," he said, stroking Blaze's head gently. The dog pressed his head against Morrow's hand and wagged his tail slowly. The villagers watched quietly, amazed by the peaceful scene. Blaze had chosen trust over aggression, and Morrow was learning to lead with respect. Ravi demonstrated small gestures that could help Morrow communicate with Blaze. He showed how to move slowly, speak softly, and allow the dog to make small decisions. Blaze responded immediately, showing attentiveness and calmness. Morrow followed each step carefully, eager to learn. The crowd began to smile quietly, realizing that what they were witnessing was more than a lesson for Morrow. It was a lesson for everyone about patience, understanding, and respect. Morrow practiced with Blaze for a long time. Each moment of calm interaction strengthened their bond. Blaze walked beside him without hesitation, obeying through trust rather than fear. Morrow began to understand that leadership was not about making others obey but about guiding them with care. He learned that even a strong and trained dog could sense the energy of its master. If the energy was harsh or proud, the dog reacted with tension. If the energy was gentle and respectful, the dog responded with loyalty and calm. Ravi spoke to Morrow again, emphasizing the importance of consistency. Every day you act with patience and understanding, Blaze will trust you more, he said. Every word, every gesture shapes the way he behaves. Leadership is not in loud commands or strict control. True leadership comes from steady guidance and care. Morrow nodded, absorbing every word. He realized that his previous approach, based on pride and force, had been wrong. Yesterday's attempt to challenge Ravi had been an act of arrogance, but now he understood the power of patience and trust. Blaze, sitting calmly beside him, seemed to sense the sincerity in his master's heart. The villagers around the square noticed the change in both Morrow and Blaze. The proud man who had come to show strength was now learning humility and respect. The powerful dog, once a tool of intimidation, now displayed calm loyalty. The people whispered to each other, impressed by the transformation they were witnessing. Children returned to their games, and merchants began arranging their shops with smiles. The square, once tense and filled with expectation, now felt peaceful and hopeful. Ravi guided Morrow through several exercises with Blaze. He demonstrated how to use slow movements and soft commands to encourage cooperation. Blaze responded to each gentle gesture with attentiveness. Morrow followed the instructions carefully, noticing how Blaze's behavior changed with each kind action. The dog was learning to trust, and Morrow was learning the meaning of true leadership. As the morning passed, Morrow's confidence grew. It was not the prideful confidence of the previous day, but a steady confidence built on understanding. He realized that power was not shown through force but through the ability to guide and inspire trust. Blaze, now calm and attentive, walked beside him without fear. The bond between master and dog grew stronger with each moment. Ravi spoke to the crowd, sharing a lesson for everyone to hear. Strength is not in force or fear, he said. It is in patience, understanding, and guidance. When we act with respect and care, we create trust. This applies to animals and people alike. True leadership is shown by the way we guide others, not by the way we command them. The villagers nodded quietly, understanding the meaning behind Ravi's words. They realized that the story of Morrow and Blaze was not just about a dog and a man. It was about the power of patience, respect, and gentle guidance. The lesson spread quietly through their hearts, creating a sense of admiration and hope. Morrow practiced more with Blaze, learning to lead with care. He discovered that the dog responded quickly to calm energy and gentle commands. Each small success gave Morrow a sense of satisfaction that he had never felt before. He began to understand the value of humility and respect, not only for Blaze but for the people around him. By midday, the palace square was filled with quiet admiration. Villagers watched as Morrow and Blaze moved together in harmony. The dog's calm obedience reflected the bond of trust they had built. Morrow's posture was relaxed but confident, showing that he had learned the true meaning of strength. The people smiled quietly, inspired by the example they were witnessing. Ravi stepped back and allowed Morrow to guide Blaze for a few moments without interference. The dog responded perfectly, walking beside Morrow with calm trust. The crowd clapped quietly, acknowledging the remarkable transformation. Morrow looked at Ravi with gratitude, realizing that he had learned far more than he had expected. He had come to challenge a god and show strength, but instead, he had learned the power of patience, respect, and understanding. The lesson of the day was clear. Pride and force could lead to mistakes, but patience, trust, and gentle guidance created loyalty and respect. The square, once tense and filled with fear, now radiated calmness and hope. The villagers carried the lesson in their hearts, knowing that the story they had witnessed would be remembered for many years. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the square, Morrow and Blaze walked away together, their bond stronger than before. Ravi remained at his post. Calm and steady. He had not only protected the palace but had guided a man and his dog toward a better path. The square returned to peace, and the kingdom of Averin felt the quiet power of understanding and patience at work. The unexpected turn had grown into a lasting change. Morrow's pride had softened, Blaze's trust had been earned, and the lesson of calmness and guidance spread quietly through the hearts of all who had witnessed it. This day would be remembered not as a day of fear or challenge but as a day when patience and understanding showed their true strength. The morning sun rose over the kingdom of Averin, casting a golden glow across the palace square. Birds chirped in the trees, and the gentle wind carried the scent of flowers from the gardens. The villagers began their daily routines, setting up market stalls and greeting one another with smiles. Yet a quiet excitement filled the air. Everyone remembered the events of the past few days, the lesson learned from Ravi, and the remarkable bond forming between Moro and his dog. Blaze. Ravi stood at his post as always, calm and steady. His presence gave the people confidence. He had guided Moro through a journey of understanding and patience. But today would show whether the lesson had truly taken hold. Moro approached the gate, holding Blaze's leash gently. His movements were careful and deliberate. There was no prideful swagger, no loud voice, only a thoughtful and respectful demeanor. The villagers noticed immediately and whispered to one another, curious to see how the day would unfold. Blaze walked calmly beside Moro. The dog's eyes were bright and alert, but his posture was relaxed. Yesterday, he had begun to trust his master, and today, that trust seemed stronger. Moro had learned to communicate with Blaze through gentle gestures, soft words, and calm energy. The powerful dog, once trained to intimidate, now responded willingly and calmly. The villagers could see the remarkable change. Ravi stepped forward and greeted Moro with a polite nod. "Good morning," he said. "It is good to see you and Blaze today. How do you feel?" Moro bowed his head slightly and replied, "I feel different today. I understand more about trust, patience, and true strength. Blaze listens to me because I guide him with respect, not because I force him. I want to continue learning and building this trust." Ravi smiled quietly. That is the path of a wise leader. True strength is shown in calm guidance, understanding, and patience. You have already taken the first steps. Continue with this attitude, and the bond between you and Blaze will grow stronger every day. Moro knelt down and spoke softly to Blaze. "Good dog," he said, stroking Blaze's head gently. The dog pressed his head against Moro's hand and wagged his tail slowly. The crowd watched in admiration. They had come to expect tension and fear, but instead, they witnessed harmony, trust, and understanding. Ravi then invited Moro to try guiding Blaze without his help. Moro stepped forward, giving small and calm gestures, while speaking softly to the dog. Blaze followed obediently, staying close to Moro and responding to each gentle signal. The villagers clapped quietly, impressed by the transformation of both master and dog. Children cheered softly, amazed by the peaceful behavior of such a strong animal. Moro walked around the square with Blaze, practicing his new skills. He realized that leadership was not about loud commands or showing power. It was about guiding others with patience and calmness. Blaze responded beautifully, walking beside him in trust. Each successful action gave Moro a sense of confidence that came from understanding and respect rather than pride. Ravi spoke to the crowd, sharing the lesson learned from the past days. "Strength is not in force, fear, or loud commands," he said. "It is in patience, understanding, and gentle guidance. When we act with respect, trust is created. This is true for animals and people alike. The most powerful leaders are those who guide with care and wisdom." The villagers listened attentively, realizing that the events of the past few days were more than a lesson about a dog or a man. It was a lesson about life, leadership, and respect. Pride and harshness could cause fear and conflict, but patience and understanding created loyalty, peace, and trust. They would remember this lesson for years to come. Moro continued practicing with Blaze throughout the morning. He learned to use slow movements, calm energy, and gentle words to communicate. Blaze responded perfectly, showing attentiveness and loyalty. The dog no longer needed to be forced or threatened. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. The villagers noticed a remarkable change in Moro. The man who had arrived with pride and the desire to challenge a royal guard had transformed into a thoughtful and humble leader in his own right. His confidence was steady, not boastful. His presence inspired trust rather than fear. People in the square smiled quietly, seeing the power of patience and understanding reflected in his actions. By noon, Moro felt ready to show that he had truly changed. He gathered a small group of villagers, children and traders around the square. He demonstrated how he now communicated with Blaze, with soft words and gentle gestures. He guided the dog through simple commands. Blaze responded immediately, walking calmly, sitting when asked, and following Moro's direction without fear or tension. The crowd watched in awe, realizing that the dog had learned trust and obedience through care rather than force. Ravi observed silently from his post, satisfied with what he saw. He had guided Moro, taught him the value of patience and understanding, and now the lesson was visible for all to see. Blaze's calm loyalty reflected Moro's transformation. The crowd applauded quietly, recognizing the effort and wisdom behind the scene. Moro turned to Ravi and said, "I understand now. Strength is not in proving yourself to others. It is in earning trust and guiding with care. I was wrong to act with pride and anger. Now, I see the value of patience, respect, and understanding." Ravi smiled. "You have learned a valuable lesson. Remember it always, and continue to practice this way. True strength is built on calmness, trust, and respect, not on force or pride." Moro nodded, feeling the truth in Ravi's words. He looked at Blaze, who wagged his tail and nuzzled against him. The dog's trust had been earned, and the bond they shared had grown stronger than ever. Morrow realized that guiding Blaze with respect had taught him more about himself than he had expected. He understood that patience and understanding were qualities that could transform not only the behavior of animals but also the hearts of people. The villagers began to leave the square, talking quietly about the events they had witnessed. Children returned to their games, running around with laughter. Merchants returned to their stalls, smiling at the peace that had returned to the area. The square, once tense and filled with expectation, now felt calm and joyful. Morrow continued to practice with Blaze throughout the afternoon. Each time the dog responded calmly and willingly, Morrow felt a growing sense of pride. Not pride in showing strength, but pride in learning, growing, and guiding with care. Blaze walked beside him loyally, reflecting the trust that had been built. Ravi approached Morrow and said, "Today, you have shown that change is possible when we act with patience and understanding. You have learned to lead without force, and Blaze has learned to trust without fear. Remember this lesson, for it will guide you in every challenge you face." Morrow nodded, grateful for the guidance. "Thank you," he said. "I will remember this lesson always. I will guide Blaze with respect and patience, and I will use what I have learned in every part of my life." As the sun began to lower, casting a warm glow across the palace square, Morrow and Blaze walked slowly back toward the outskirts of the village. The villagers waved and smiled, feeling inspired by the story of transformation and trust. Morrow had come to prove strength, but instead, he had learned the power of patience, guidance, and respect. Blaze had found loyalty and calm in his master, and the kingdom had witnessed a lesson that would be remembered for years. By evening, the square returned to its peaceful state. Ravi remained at his post. Calm and steady, knowing that the lesson had been understood. The villagers went home with smiles, the children played happily, and the kingdom of Averin felt the quiet power of understanding and patience at work. Morrow and Blaze had changed. Morrow no longer relied on pride or force. He had discovered that true strength came from guidance, trust, and patience. Blaze had learned to respond with calm loyalty, reflecting the respect and care of his master. Together, they became an example of harmony, understanding, and transformation. The story of Morrow and Blaze spread quietly through the kingdom. People told it to their children, spoke of it in the markets, and remembered it during daily life. The lesson was clear. Patience, respect, and calm guidance were far more powerful than force or pride. Strength was not measured by dominance, but by the ability to guide, inspire, and create trust. In the end, the plan that Morrow had made to show power and challenge the royal guard had backfired, but the backfire was not failure. It was a blessing. It led to change, understanding, and growth. Morrow had learned humility, Blaze had learned trust, and the villagers had witnessed a lesson that would shape their lives. The kingdom of Averin had not only been protected by Ravi, but had also learned the true meaning of strength through patience and respect. As the stars began to shine over the quiet kingdom, Morrow and Blaze walked home together. The bond they shared was stronger than ever, and the lessons of the past days would remain in their hearts forever. Ravi stood at the gate. Calm and steady, watching over the kingdom. He had guided them toward a better path, and peace had returned to the square, stronger and more lasting than before. The day ended, not with pride or fear, but with calm, understanding, and trust. Morrow had changed, Blaze had changed, and the kingdom had witnessed the power of patience. The lesson was complete, and the story of the backfired plan that led to transformation would be remembered forever.